All right. So let's get started. It's been so long since um I've streamed, but a new buddy that I've met. We gonna help each other be a little more accountable on the content side. So yeah, we'll see how this goes. But I'm gonna try to do these weekly streams. I said this is my last stream, which was let me see when my last stream was. I want to say gotta check my own channel because I don't even know how long ago it was. It's been since January 14th, so it's not that bad. It's not a full year, so I don't feel as bad. But yeah, in the last stream, we talked about getting your first UX interview. This stream, we're going to be talking about online portfolios versus portfolio presentations. Because I have seen people kind of, I've noticed, kind of consider them one and the same. And I believe they have completely different purposes. But we'll get to that in a second. Honestly, I'm still kind of waking up, and there's maybe a 50% chance my 4-year old will come bursting through the door any minute now. So we'll see. But we're gonna get a slow start here as letting my coffee to kick in. But yeah, today's stream is gonna be about online portfolios and portfolio presentations. And the way that I like to think about them is that an online portfolio is more like a teaser. Portfolio presentation is more like the full featured film or the full episode. It's a little bit more of a commitment. When you think of your online portfolio, let me lower my sound here a little bit. When you think about your online portfolio, you're creating it as more, at least for me, I consider it more as like a reference. It's something that validates my capabilities as a designer, but it's not something that I necessarily think of as it's just out there and just pulling in all these recruiters or companies or anything like that. It's something that even if you send it to recruiters or if you send it to these companies, there's no commitment on their side that they have to view it. Like they might look at your resume may get scanned, and then you may not even get a response. They may not even look at it. And so that's why I think with an online portfolio, you want to try to make it short and sweet, just to give the reader the notion that you know what you're doing and that you have the talent that meets the requirements of the role. When you think about a portfolio presentation, it's much more involved. It tells more of the depth of the story, which you don't want to like you don't want to muddy up your online portfolio, because your online portfolio, if you have, let's say, a few minutes of a potential company's time, they're going to scan it. They're not going to read all the detail. And I think that's one of the challenges with an online portfolio, or being a UX designer in general, is that we're doing so many things. Our toolkit is so wide that there's so many potential areas that you can go into and dig deeper into. And really, you want to just kind of focus on a few parts, which, I've touched on the portfolio presentation. I think you can even condense that even more for an online portfolio. But they're going to be just, in my opinion, they're going to be in scan mode. There might be a few things that they want to dive deeper into. And so, like, I'll show my online portfolio in a second too, but an online portfolio, again, is scannable, gives a little bit more depth, but it might not go into the details of your decision making around the things that you didn't go into. So that kind of shows a little bit more of the drama or more of the story that kind of you can provide in a portfolio presentation. But an online portfolio, I expect that you have the context, you kind of talk to about where the business is at or where the users are at. What is your intent or what is your things that you saw within that context to, for you as a designer, as I saw this opportunity in the business. And so I decided to do X, Y, Z. I started to explore this avenue as a designer, or, if you're still kind of lower level, you might, just be assigned a project or a client. And so then you just say, well, I was assigned this client. I saw this opportunity and this is what was given, but this is how I, dug into it. And, you start talking about your actions, the user flows, wireframes, visual design, or whatever it may be, whatever research you did, and then talking about the results of like the impact of what your work was. And those are kind of the high level things I would expect in an online portfolio that hopefully I can just scan. And for portfolio presentation, I believe the depth that you can go into, again, it starts talking more into the story, your relationships with people, and actually how you influence people to get your work done. So again, the way I see it is online portfolios are a little bit more like a trailer. Portfolio presentation much more involved. Um, it's much more it's much more like the full episode. And the one thing about the portfolio presentation is that it's a commitment between you and the recruiter or the company. Because at this point, they've already committed to saying, yes, we liked what we saw in the trailer. We want to see more. And that way you have the person's full attention for that, what typically is like 45 minutes. Because you want to do like 45 minutes and then you have like 15 minutes left for questions. And so with that full commitment for that full focus, that's when you have the person's attention and you can really curate that conversation or curate that time with those individuals. So with that, I have a few things I want to share. And I figure I'd start off when I start to think of the concept. I just watched Doctor Strange in the Multiverse. And so I figured, well, if we're talking trailers, let's talk about trailers. So let me share this browser. There we go. So we're going to watch this. Probably lower this audio a little bit. And if you think about it, also I do everything with subtitles. I can't hear any people anymore. So subtitles is the way to watch. So you think about a trailer, right? A lot of this isn't going to make sense coherently. But the things that you start to capture, obviously your title, right? You don't forget your name on your portfolio. But you're kind of the main character here, right? It's you kind of communicating what you did in your work. In this case, you're showing for this movie trailer, they're showing just various scenes, showing a lot of who is involved, showing some of the action scenes that, like, as a Marvel fan like myself, there's moments of this that start to grab my attention of, do I want to commit for this movie's like 2 hours or something like that? Do I want to commit my time to this designer and see what he has to say or he or she has to say about their portfolio? That scene alone right there, hearing Professor X's voice at that moment is kind of the like, oh crap, I need to watch this movie, even though it took me forever to watch this movie. Yeah, seeing the different multiverse Doctor Stranges, all the CG and everything looks really solid. Didn't realize that part of this movie was in it. Watching the trailer after watching the movie, I had no idea that that much was in it. All right, so man, that's so funny. So there's a few things to unpack with the trailer, right? Like, um, in your portfolio, there's going to be moments in your portfolio that will just give the viewer more confidence that you are going to be worth their time. And some of those things are just like, the base things that you would expect: user flows, designs, visual design, and all that. Those are kind of core things. Like CG in a movie, if you think about, like, um, if you watched what's that X-Men movie with Wolverine where his CG of his claws were like the worst thing possible. What's that, Chris? What's the niche? Cat videos. We're watching cat videos next. Um, but yeah, if they showed that CG scene where Wolverine's looking at his claws in the mirror, it would automatically make me feel like, okay, I don't think I'm gonna watch this movie. Granted, I didn't watch many of the Wolverine movies, but the quality of your portfolio has to be at a point where it's not going to be distracting enough where it automatically turns someone off. And so that's where your online portfolio can start to kind of fill those gaps, because it's just there to really draw someone in and then give them confidence of, okay, this person looks like they have the skills and I want to bring them in for, in this case, it would usually be a phone screen. And in a phone screen, they usually ask you some general behavioral questions, and then they do a portfolio. Usually not a portfolio review, but they at least talk to previous work. How you doing, Chris? How you doing, Tanish? Tanish was the one that told me I needed to stream again, so I need to be accountable to that. Not sure if I have chat on my stream more. I jumped into this like really unprepared. I really like set up the stream like 5 minutes ago. Well, not 5 minutes ago, but 5 minutes before starting the stream. And I feel like I've just been kind of rambling. This is it's not gonna probably be it's gonna have to be well edited to make a coherent video. But I gotta watch a Doctor Strange trailer, so that's a highlight. All right, so we're gonna go back. So thinking about trailer, busy week, excited for the weekend. Nice. Yeah, it's been a busy week for me too. And my dog's barking now, or whining. Oh, Chris, like a sleazy. All right, so we're gonna I'm gonna have to let Lucy out. All right. She's singing in the background. Give me a second. All right, I'm back. All right, so this is my online portfolio. I I only use it for references to work. So if someone is interested uh, in, if it's like if I am looking for work, then I would use this portfolio. It's actually kind of a waste of money because it's like kind of expensive for like every month paying for something that you only use like once every few years. But yeah, I just use this solely for recruiting purposes. I don't use it for any other purpose. And so that's one thing to think about with your online portfolio is, or just I guess your site in general. What's your purpose of it? For me, it's purely hiring. It's no expression of myself as a designer. It's hey, here's my work, hire me. I need money, kind of thing. So I only have three projects. I used to have a fourth category where it was just like the dump of everything else of my previous experience or side projects and all that kind of stuff. For me, I just want people to focus on three things. Custom ink is a little bit more of my role as a product design manager. Foxton was more of my work as an individual contributor, and PGI was more process oriented. And um, so yeah, so Foxen is much more of your typical portfolio piece where it's you know designing a product. Custom Ink is much more about my influence as a design leader within the team, and I lead with a little bit of you know my role on the team as well as the results of whatever that the project is. So again, I'm trying to think of this as a trailer. I haven't touched this in a while, and anytime a designer looks at their portfolio, they always have a need to like redesign it. I am not going to do that. I'm very content with where I'm at right now. So I'm gonna click into this. So again, I want to provide enough context, but I don't want to give too much detail because designers do all the things, but I just want people to focus. If this is going to be scannable, again, if I am a recruiter looking at this portfolio, I'm literally going to like have a very consistent scroll and just be drawn to a few visuals here. One, problems, personal apps, remote workers, legacy products. There's some sort of imagery there. I see that there is um, some sort of giant um, sticky notepad with drawings on it. I see sketches. I see some user flows on a whiteboard and a polished version. I see low fidelity prototypes. I see some visual design branding. I see people on a whiteboard talking with some emojis in the air. All right, see you, Chris. Thanks for dropping by, dude. I see some more visuals, and I see desirability testing. So there's some validation going on. I see some summaries of those results, some quotes. I see some visuals. I see some character in that Guardians of the Galaxy. Again, more animation, more things that draw the eye. More visuals, rebranding, usability testing, more animations, and then some videos at the end. And then I have kind of like a way to visualize my involvement in the project. So again, I spent maybe like 2 minutes just kind of scrolling down this. It's kind of like I leave maybe like one small paragraph per section, but I am not going to be trying to give all the details of why I chose one concept over the other. I'm not going into detail of what this user flow is, and granted, that's a lot of detail. I'm not talking about why I'm presenting these things. It's just a lot of what's. It's like this is what I did, and so that is what's been successful to me. Like I try to just show, like, again, if we think about the trailer, like a movie trailer, it's just like I'm just trying to show high level things that will draw people in, that draws interest, and that's my main goal with the portfolio. Excuse me, with the online portfolio. Um, this design, all these designs were back in like 2016. So eventually, this is still like one of my favorite projects because I was involved very early in the process. But um, yeah, so the designs and all that I think are still like relevant. If I felt like my work was starting to get irrelevant, which or outdated, that's when I would want to refresh a lot of these things. And I think at this point is getting to that point where usually when you present work, um, I've heard a best practice is like you want to keep it within 5 years, and this is not beyond 5 years, but the work itself is still valuable. But I'm reaching the point where this project would probably need to be shuffled out. All right, so if this is the portfolio presentation, right? Like there is no commitment here. The recruiter has the choice of whether or not they wanted to view my portfolio, and I have no idea what they looked at, and I'm not there to speak to any of it. So that's where I go to portfolio presentation, which this deck will probably look familiar if you watched my previous video on portfolio presentations because it's literally the same template. I just took out the content, and this was one I prepared for Facebook. Um, I don't even think they were meta at the time. This was back in 2020. And I ended up not presenting this because I already got my offer from Amazon. So I was like, nah, I'm done interviewing. Interviewing is very taxing for me. And so I was like, after I got the offer, I was like, sorry, the timing. I personally wanted to work at Amazon more than Facebook. And so after I got the Amazon offer, it was kind of a done deal. You were wondering about the screens with motion. Isn't too many screens moving together? Um, I felt that three were, um, well, I think I had three on one section and four in here. For me, I don't feel like it was too overwhelming. I mean, it is like a lot of motion happening, but I would say it's also kind of I kind of condensed it on the page, so I don't feel like it's uh, too overwhelming. It's enough motion that I felt like it gives people kind of the idea of action, but not. I don't expect this to be something that people are focusing on in the individual screens. But that is definitely something good to kind of keep in mind on. Like I've seen some portfolios where, for especially for visual design, I've seen people throw like more than a dozen screens together on one section, and I do feel like that is a bit overwhelming. Like you want to have people or help people kind of draw their eye to something, and so with this, I felt like considering the amount of empty space I have around the page and around the animations itself, I felt like it was balanced. But but if it is too much, then then that's some feedback I can take back. But yeah, I haven't. I felt like it was balanced, but I think it's definitely something to look out for. Like if I really wanted people to dive into this, then I would probably have one of the screens on the left and then have some text on the right if I'm really trying to communicate something specific about one individual animation. I think my purpose of showing these four side by side is just to show technical skill and that this was something that I explored. All right, so diving into the portfolio presentation, I'm not going to present it because these portfolio presentations are again typically 45 minutes, and I usually aim for 20 to 15 minutes per presentation, or sorry, per project. Because my Foxen one is a little longer because technically it's two products in one. And then my custom ink stuff is about 15 minutes, and so I try to aim for 40 to 45 minutes just so I can get ample amount of time um, for questions. And again, this is the portfolio presentation. The other party has committed to hearing me talk about my work, and so they're going to be full focused. They're going to be, they can scrutinize anything in this presentation, and I'm totally prepared for it. Well, mostly prepared for it. Whereas this, like, if I don't expect people to scrutinize this. I think it's more of again this the scan, because if you think about all the portfolios that the recruiters are getting or the hiring managers are getting, they only have so much time, and so I just want them to be able to see, like, um, see just visual validations that they want to talk more. All right, so I always have it about me screen just to kind of make it a little more human. Talk about yourself a little bit. Um, I present why I'm working on something. I'm not gonna. I've talked about this before, so I'm not gonna draw. I'm not gonna dive too deep into this. I'm gonna have probably another stream where I'm talking specifically to presenting my own work, but I kind of give them a glimpse of what I'm going into, and then talk about the structure, and then I just dive in. This is a ready talk. This is the project. This is how it kind of evolved over time, and you know, I'm just showing images, and then I can go into depth. And so that's where the portfolio presentation shines because you can use your own personal presentation skills or, however which way you like to present. and you can add a little bit more of your character, a little bit more of your storytelling, because one of the things that you want to think about when you're doing portfolio presentations is that you want to tell a story. You don't want to just tell your process, if that makes sense. Because I've seen people always introduce the double diamond in portfolio presentations, and it's not that that's bad. It's just that it's a little bit unrealistic unless you introduced it, implemented it, and saw it go through the full double diamond. But really, the design process is like multiple double diamonds that are happening rapidly. And I just think showing a double diamond, expecting people to understand like this is my process. It's a little it lacks the depth that I think helps their viewer understand how you will fit into their circumstance or their scenario. Whereas telling the story helps them understand like, oh, if Nam was, in this company, I would see them interacting with the product managers and engineers or executives in this way based off of the way he's telling his story and how he takes the initiative and does XYZ thing. So again, I'm not going to go too much into detail about my slides just because it's something that we've talked about in a previous video, but I will, actually present this later just so that people can see how I go about presenting my work. But I go through my problems, my role. Again, like these are just imagery to help talk about like who we were targeting. I talk about my key objectives. My portfolio is based off the star format, and so I give the context. These objectives are technically the tasks, and so as a designer, I saw that I needed to define what the expectations were, what differentiated us, what's our scope, and all that stuff. And so, again, like this is where I can bring up that user flow, bring it big, talk about like, oh, I went through and you defined all these interactions, but then also expanded a little further to understand how people are driving to this experience to make it more successful. There was a little more of like, dramatic moments. Going back to that, going back to the teaser versus the movie. This is where you can talk about the things that didn't go well, and so I have little statements here. It needed to be more than usable. It needed to be delightful. Because we were just a table stakes product at that time. And so, I go through my exploration. I show, sketches. And again, this is where I don't just say, I did some sketches and then I moved to wireframes. I did some sketches to understand, what was kind of feasible. I was working really closely with my developer. And for an example, early concept, these little circles here were videos. And I wanted to have while you're having a video chat with someone, you could see the little circles for other people that are in the meeting and be able to see their videos moving. But we saw that there was a technical constraint, and that wasn't feasible. And so that's just an example of how I use sketching to kind of get back to those tasks of expectations, and will differentiate us. And for that specific case, it's like, what's our scope? Because that was just not technically feasible. What's going on, Sam? The best UX content on YouTube. All right. So again, like if you're going to be showing sketches, wireframes, user flows, always kind of go back to why those things are important, because you don't want to just be pulling out of a UX toolkit of like wireframes and user flows just because that is the process. You're using these things for a purpose for the people that you're working with. And I think that's also the difference between the online portfolio and portfolio presentation. So the online portfolio is exactly that. It's just showing all the things with a little bit of context. This is where you can really dive deeper and say, like, I did these user flows with my product manager so that they can understand the scope of the work, and for me to understand, the things that I could focus on now versus later, and talk about some of the gaps of how you influence product, because sometimes product doesn't think about all the traffic drivers that goes into the product. Again, purpose of the animations was, for this was a mobile first application, so I really wanted to dive deeper into the interactions between all these different screens. So I was working really closely with the developer on this. So I wanted to be able to articulate the animations and the visions I was thinking, and then just kind of go into visuals. So I'm just going to breeze through these rest of these few slides. But again, it's going to be the same kind of things that we're talking to, where you're just talking about the why you did the things, like why I went with the Foxen visual before instead of the Nudge Me and the Moocaw concept, the testing that was involved, translating that into actual working prototypes, and then I talked to how we pivoted and all these things. So, oh, that's right. So at one point I had just like different screens to try to communicate some of the concepts that we were going with in-room technology, usability testing, some of the animations that I did for to communicate some of the issues we had with some of the usability testing. So yeah. Oh, and also at the end, talk about the results, talk about, I didn't have hard metrics. And usually you think about like, oh, I have to show my impact. I'm going to show my specific metrics, or like specific usage metrics that say, you increased adoption, or you increased the amount of join now button clicks and all this kind of stuff. I had very loose metrics. I made pretty loose connections that I still was able to kind of grab some numbers, but if I wasn't able to grab some of those metrics, then I typically talk to like team dynamics, like, oh, well, increase team morale by increasing the amount of collaboration between me and developers or something like that. And also this was we were acquired shortly after. So, it's not a direct reason why they acquired us, but it also shows it's kind of a loose result. And then I talk about like what I was kind of what I would have done differently if we were still continuing to support this product. So if you come from like a consultancy background, this is where it's a little challenging, because usually you don't have all those metrics that you're able to communicate back to the product. But yeah, so that is the difference, right? Like portfolio presentation, online portfolio, I have very similar content. It just gives me the opportunity to dive deeper. And, I've interviewed some designers that are able to present from something like this. And I would say even recently, there was one where the individual had just about the same amount of, ratio of like imagery to text as mine. And even then, this person did a great job communicating it. So like for an online portfolio, or for a portfolio presentation, it can work. But I think the portfolio presentation can be much more catered. It's much more streamlined. And, depending on the individual, if someone sees some of these screens, like as you're showing them, again, they might be distracted by some of the text that you have on the screen, and they may just be kind of, drawn to other things, especially like I have a lot of negative space. If you don't have a lot of negative space, then there'll be a lot more room for distraction. Also to mention, for portfolio presentation, I feel like you're walking someone through a story. Whereas with this, I have seen some designers where they struggle to kind of break away from their sequence. So like they'll be talking to their problems, brainstorming or whatever, and then they're just start to slow down too much, and the way they manage their time starts to kind of fall out the door. And so that's another thing with portfolio presentations, is that it's something that you've practiced, you've gone through slide by slide. You have an idea of where everything's at. So I feel like it's an easier way to kind of manage the time that you have with recruiters, which again, it's committed time versus on portfolio. It's, it's not there. There is no commitment there. What are your thoughts on PowerPoint? PowerPoint is horrible, dude. Um, Star method is huge, especially if you want to get hired at Amazon. Star format is the way that they. I wouldn't say that you're not required to use a star format. It just is so much easier for um, the person interviewing you to get the data points that they want. And I would use the star format moving on because I feel like in interviews I'm tired of just trying to think off just randomly react to people's questions and try to cater. I feel the star format at least gives me the structure where I can give all the context that's needed. Because it's like you talk about the context, you talk about what you wanted to do, you talk about your actions and what you specifically did, and then you just talk about your results and the impact that you made. But yeah, PowerPoint's horrible. All my presentations are made in Figma now. It's just super easy. The animations work. Like it doesn't try to think for me. But yeah, I do want to do a video just like on star format alone because when I created my portfolio, I I did focus all of this on the star format, which it's um, where when you're answering like a question around on like the leadership principles or like a behavioral question, it's very clear when there's a start and a finish to the star format. With the design portfolio, it's a little different because it's it's like multiple star formats, like because you're talking about like if like we're talking to like user flows, it's like well the situation is that none of this is really defined, and so I know I needed to define the end-to-end experience, and so I created this user flow, and the result was is that I was able to impact the team's scope on the project as we identified new areas where you know to help us define what success is for the user. And that's like one short example, but you could use that star format for everything. It's like I did a competitive analysis because these things are because I realized that my team didn't see what what competitors were doing, and I needed to get everyone together so that we were aligned on what expectations were and what was when we think about user experience. It's like what's a good experience, what's a poor experience. If 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 the other team members aren't looking outside of their code or their day to day PM activities, then they'll come in with maybe lower expectations. And so if they're not looking at, or in this case, it's a video collaboration tool. So it's like if they're not looking at Zoom or Google Meet, and they just come in, and I will say the design they had before I joined was like it was designed like a table stakes product. It was not good. That transition was smooth. I don't have any of my animations uh, on this stream. Yeah, you can ask me whatever. I'm basically wrapping up. I got a meeting in an hour or two, so I gotta check my schedule actually. Yeah, so I'll stream for just a little bit more. But yeah, I do plan on revamping the stream a bit because uh, I haven't touched it. Like I promise Tanisha, Tanisha, I don't know how to say your username. Skeed Walker. Kitty Walker? Yeah, I was promising Tanish that I was like, I'm gonna stream. You watched my previous stream, you left a comment. So I'm like, okay, I need to I need to get back on this. It was good encouragement. I enjoy streaming. Skeet Walker. Okay, cool. Sort of like Yelp, but instead of rating restaurants, you rate food. You rate the food at the restaurants, or do you just rate food in general? I'm gonna send you my consulting bill after this, by the way. Food at the restaurant. So you can basically, um, if I was searching chicken tikka masala, and I could find all the chicken tikka masalas in the area and have them rated. It's not a bad idea. I did see, I think it was Uber Eats, maybe. You can search for dishes, and then you could see, I think, all the places that have that specific entree or whatever. Don't steal my idea. I ain't got time to steal ideas, man. What up? How much would you charge, bro? I can't take on a side project, man. That it matters what you want. Like if you're actually like if you're actually thinking about like you're wanting to have someone design that concept, I mean that's a pretty lengthy project. It's not like hard conceptually, but like it's just time. You could ask Tanisha over there. He might be able to help you out. Yeah, I with uh with me you can't even like stream consistently like for like 1 hour each week. Doing a side project sounds a little daunting. Um, lengthy money. I need the long money. Uh, I don't know. Um, I guess it matters what you're looking for. If you're looking for like someone to like partner with, and you're just kind of like brainstorming together and eventually coming up with concepts and all that kind of stuff, that's one thing. Or if you're like, I have this idea, I have what's already defined, and I just need someone to produce the thing. That's another thing. Because like, for me, we could like, it's not too challenging to like get the concept in a clickable prototype, but then you also think about like development and all that stuff. But yeah, have I ever thought about converting my website to Figma? Um, no. I've never thought about using Figma in that way to like publishing. I feel like well, it's probably every 2 or 3 years my website gets hosted somewhere else. And so right now I'm on Webflow, I think, which is okay. I don't mind it, but it's also like a monthly payment. I think it's like $15 a month, and then you have hosting and all that stuff. But Figma would definitely be easier, and the way that it does frames and all that kind of stuff and the auto layout, it seems conceptually it would be really easy. And Webflow is okay. I see some people like really love Webflow. and I think it's better than like Dreamweaver and stuff. But I don't want to just stay in Webflow. I think I met some of the designers where they're like basically Webflow designers, and I think those are more like designers just focused on like those traditional websites where you have like header, banner, main call to action. You have like three um, three highlights of the product, and then reasons to use it, and then like a footer or references and all that kind of stuff. Like all the it's like a same kind of I don't say generic in a bad way, but like it's just a generic kind of like marketing site. So it's a little bit more on the marketing side than it is kind of um, on the product side. Yeah, Webflow is definitely awesome. I just I don't want to live there. It's I feel like there's another product on the top of my mind. I can't remember that's similar. But as part of all those kind of website generators, Squarespace and all that stuff, Webflow is definitely actually more like a design tool. Yeah, there's definitely a learning curve, but I've never used it like if I was working with a client and I was like, and if it wasn't a marketing site, I don't know like how you would tie it into like a CMS or something like that. And if you were like wanting to give them power to uh, input data, because Webflow, as far as I understand, it's all like hard coded because you're just like designing it. And if you need to update some text, or I don't know if you can like call an API and it just updates or something like that. I'm assuming you should be able to. That seems like something it would do. All right. Well, it's 15 after. I was trying to keep this to an hour, even though I started a little late. But I am going to go ahead and kind of wrap up for now. My goal for next stream might be to. Well, I'm also gonna be out of town, so it's gonna be like a. I'm gonna try this. I don't even know how this is gonna work, but I'm gonna try to do a like a mobile stream or something like that, and just kind of talk to a few things. But yeah, Tanisha, if there's anything that you're particularly interested in, I can also keep that in mind too. I have a few things. Portfolio presentation won't be next week since I won't be on my computer though. That's pain, dude. First freelance client negotiated like a pro, got the job, and it got canceled the next day. That is very unfortunate. I do know of a designer where this person got an offer. This is during COVID, so that's that. But this person got an offer, put in her 2 weeks notice, and then in the middle of that 2 week notice, they retracted the offer. Worst, worst situation ever. I couldn't imagine a worse situation. We're like, oh, hey boss, can I keep my job? My other job retracted the offer. I think the one thing is that this person didn't sign the offer. I don't think yet. Like, it was like a verbal offer. I think so. That is. I mean, I think it could happen even with the signed offer, especially during COVID because everything was just chaos. But yeah, I always try to keep your. You know, I feel like I don't think anything is solid until I see the offer and I can sign it. But everything worked out. This person ended up getting an offer elsewhere. Um, I think a few weeks or months after. I mean, and realistically, like we all got laid off eventually. so, uh, So technically, she kind of got the better deal out of all of us. We got severance and stuff, but it's being laid off is not fun, and that's why I'm very content with where I'm at because no one's going to buy out Amazon anytime soon. Awesome. Yeah. At the end of the day, I hope these streams are helpful. Star format is going to be something I take with me into the future. I know that companies like Google and stuff, I think, are a little bit different in the way they want to hear more about like how, from what I understand, like kind of how brilliant you are, and so you want to talk more about ideas than what you've done in the past. But looking at your past experience and communicating it in the star format is, I think, a good way to communicate your value as a designer because it's things that you've already done. And yeah, how you tell your story in presentations is is big. Like I mean I do have. I will share this real quick. Because I was doing a little bit of design ops as a product design manager, I have the double diamond in my portfolio too. But that looks crazily pixelated. But yeah, there's a lot more detail in these double diamond things. But you know, I was like looking at process and working to make it efficient, doing things like what do we call it? Something of a designer, shapes of a designer, which is some work that, gosh, I can't remember his name, but really talented designer who I branched off of some of his work. But there's ways that you can kind of diagram yourself as a designer. So these are kind of some activities that I was pushing within my team at the time, just so that people kind of understand where their strengths are, where they want to grow, and who they are individually, highlights, and um, uh, the bottom side of their experience. But yeah, so this is a whole other thing. This actually might be something cool that we can do together as well in the future. But yeah, if you're gonna talk about design process, like the double diamond and stuff, for me in this context, it's um, I am trying to communicate that like I push this in to the team, and we were striving for alignment and stuff like that in regards to that process. But if I'm trying to talk about my Foxton work and I'm just showing a double diamond, like this is my process, I um, you know do research and I do get a lot of ideas, and then I bring those ideas in and consolidate them into one, and then I go to development and I expand it again or whatever. Like um, I just don't think that's a realistic way of how people work. I think it's conceptually there. I just think it doesn't tell this the real story behind what people do. A hypothetical project from scratch. I so I do some mentoring at work too, and in the case where I would have them just shadow me while I design, and so I'd like to do that, but yeah, that takes a little bit more prep, and I can't do it for my actual work, obviously. So I'll have to put some more thought into that. But yeah, I'll keep that in mind. Alrighty, I'm going to go ahead and call it. Get back to work. This is one of the benefits of working on my team is that we have work flexibility, and I can work the hours that work for me. And so I decided to spend this morning doing some streaming. But that also means I'll probably make it up later. All right, guys. Thanks, Anish, Chris, Sam, for joining in on the stream, and anyone else. Um, this will be the plan. I'm going to try to aim for Friday mornings. Next Friday, I'm going to be out of town, but we'll see what I can kind of pull together from a mobile stream perspective. But yeah, I'll see about kind of cutting this up into an actual video. Um, but we'll see how that goes. I don't want to like overcommit. But all right, take care, guys. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. It encourages me to see numbers, just so that I can remind myself, like, oh, this is something that is valuable to people. But anyway, you have a good weekend, and I'll catch you later. See you guys.